We love Zencaster because it allows us to record the audio for our podcast and create the video segments we use for our weekly Sister Scoop episodes. Zencaster has helped us make content capture simple.
It's now super easy to record a podcast with Zencaster. Log in using your browser and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. Record studio quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests, and feel a sense of zen knowing Zencaster's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable.
If you've thought about podcasting before and realized that you need a lot of different tools and services, those days are over. With Zencaster's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcast in one place and distribute it to Spotify, Apple, and other major destinations.
Just go to zencastr.com/pricing and use our code SistersAssembled, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencaster paid plan. We want you to have the same easy experiences we do for all of our podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.
Katie and I are always hungry, and one snack we both love is beef jerky. That's why we're so excited to tell you about one of our favorite jerky brands, Matt Hat Jerky.
Matt Hat's delicious taste makes it a great snack, and the variety of flavors, including original, black truffle, and my personal favorite, roasted garlic, means there's a flavor for everyone. Plus, it's local to the area where we grew up in, which we just love.
Use the link in the show notes below to get some Matt Hat Jerky for yourself, and make sure to use our coupon code SistersAssembled for 10% off. Hello and welcome to Sisters Assembled, your home for all things MCU. And we thought we would go back to our replay series, but then we decided we weren't quite done with Wonder Man. So we have another episode today, just kind of talking about more deeply what could be next for Simon, especially as it relates to future properties, because there are some interesting rumors out there circulating about where we might see him and Yahya portraying him moving forward. So that's going to be the topic of today's episode. We're excited to continue talking about our newest superhero, or soon to be superhero, because he's just kind of Simon right now. Anyway, with all that being said, Katie, take it away.
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked a little bit about this idea of what is next for Simon in our episodes 5 through 8 episode, which would have been our previous podcast episode if you guys have listened to it. And I think at the time, the concept was, well, the way this ended, I know at least my take was, it doesn't really make sense for us to have him go into Doomsday, right? Like, where would he come from? Where's the heavy lifting? Whatever. And there was no confirmation at the time either that he was going to be in it. And they've asked. He's been interviewed. He's been asked the question. And he's literally diverted away from it every single time, has not given a straight answer. And I know for some people that's the immediate, like, it's Andrew Garfield. But on the other hand, it's also the, like, well, he might actually just be, like, diverting because he isn't in it, but he can't give an answer either way. Now, that's kind of changed a little bit because there are rumors flying around that his next return, or his first return, his next appearance will be in Doomsday. So I think now it kind of opens that door for us to theorize and really get into, what does that look like? Because knowing where this series did end, knowing the properties we have coming up, which are not going to lead him into Doomsday specifically, it's kind of leaving that open-ended question of, how do we even get him into Doomsday, and how does it make sense?
Yeah, I think this is a good conversation to be having right now, especially because, there's like new Doomsday news and rumors every week. We just finished the show. Who knows? Maybe one day this week we will get confirmation that he is in the movie and is working with the rest of the team on the reshoots. But to answer your question, I actually want to take a quick step back because, yes, Doomsday might be his next property, but there's something else that I think is interesting about Wonder Man and what his future could be, and that's a potential season 2. Because as of right now, that is actually on the table. The showrunner for the show has not said that they are, doing a limited release, and that his vision for what could happen in a season 2 is that Simon ends up in a similar situation to Trevor in terms of the DODC, has basically something on him and he has to work with them in order to keep his secret, to keep his career. The reason I bring this up is because that to me, and that's not him saying this is exactly what the script is for season 2 and we're greenlit for season 2 and this is happening. But if that is the direction he's going in, then that is a direct sequel to season 1. And it doesn't really necessarily lend itself to Simon appearing in Doomsday because that's on a much bigger scale. It's much more visible. He goes into Doomsday, he works with well known Avengers, and his secret is definitely no longer a secret. So that's the other thing where, yes, there are these rumors about Doomsday, but I think the thing we have to think about is, are they looking at a season 2? The showrunner says maybe. But then also, what is Simon's motivation in Doomsday? Because if he goes into that movie and he, say is recruited, and we'll get more deeply into actually answering Katie's question in a second, if that happens, he can kiss his career goodbye because the Avengers don't exactly operate under the radar in a lot of their battles. I mean, sometimes they do, of course, but think about Sokovia. Think about DC. Those aren't exactly quiet, covert operations. So he could totally risk blowing up his entire life if he does end up allying himself with either Avengers team.
Yeah, I want to break into this season 2 conversation maybe a little bit before we focus too much on the Doomsday one. Mainly because my biggest concern with something like this having a season 2 with the knowledge of Doomsday and Secret Wars definitely coming before it is I'm worried we're going to have another Doctor Strange moment.
Yes.
Where if you watch Doctor Strange from Doctor Strange 1 to Doctor Strange MOM, just those 2 movies, literally 1 and 2 of his own movies, they don't make sense.
No.
And you absolutely have to watch the other movies he is in. And I'm including, like, even the little bit of, I mean, okay, you don't have to watch the whole movie for this, but like Thor, you should. Thor Ragnarok, the small appearance there. He was in something else that I'm blanking on right now. He was in Spider-Man.
Which is huge for his movie. Actually sets it up.
Yes. So you literally have to watch pretty much all of his other appearances in order for it to make sense.
Yep.
Now, don't get me wrong. He's not the only one for that to happen to. Even Cap, that kind of started to happen by the 3rd movie because the Sokovia Accords were a direct result to Age of Ultron. So without that knowledge, but you still could have like watched the movie.
Yeah.
Doctor Strange, like MOM is genuinely a hard watch.
For so many reasons.
I was going to say, I was like, I could just end there.
Yeah,
I could
period,
just be like,
the end.
It just is. But it's a hard watch when you're going from the first Doctor Strange from 2016 into MOM, which came out in 2022. It is very difficult to have this 8-year gap. Nope, that's not 8 years. 6-year gap. It felt like 8 years. Actually, in at the MCU, it was probably 8 years, to be fair.
Wait, remind me what years you're going through again?
Well, 2016 to 2022. But MOM would have had to have already been past that point because it was a 5-year gap.
Yeah, you're right.
So in the MCU, you're close to at least 7 or 8 years, could be even a little longer by the time MOM comes out from where we saw Doctor Strange in his first movie. I say all this to say, not to dog on the Doctor Strange stuff, because I could stay on that topic for a long time. I struggle a lot because if we're gonna do a season 2, which again, I'm not upset about, it has to stay in its own lane. And this character cannot be put into the bigger team ups for it to make sense, unfortunately. That is why, whether I like it or not, that is why Loki season 1 and season 2 work. Because Loki is so far removed from the actual plot of what is happening in the MCU that you can go from one season to the next and you don't have to worry about your character having been through 17 other traumatic events in the meantime that's going to tell the story of how they now have PTSD. And you're like, well, I don't really understand that because the first movie they didn't and they were good. And it's hard to kind of go about that. So I would be down for a second season. I see how they could have set that up a little bit. I mean, we said it in our last episode. The DODC points out he could be an asset. I see how they're setting up for the possibility of doing that. But I think you have to pick the route of it's either a season 2 or it's an appearance in Doomsday / Secret Wars. It can't be both.
I 100% agree with you. I think the other element that's important here is one of the reasons I think a lot of people are really just falling in love with this show is how grounded and separate it is from the MCU. I mean, it was something that we even talked about. This is a show, a regular show that just happens to be set in the world of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And that's kind of the premise of where we're setting the foundation. Now, if we're going to try to do a season 2, I think you would want to kind of keep that going because that's what a lot of people were resonating with. Not this hit you over the head with all of this, additional in universe stuff. You cannot do that if he just spent a movie or probably two, because if you're in Doomsday and you don't die, which hopefully they wouldn't kill him, you're probably in Secret Wars too. So let's just talk about that too. The fact that he signs up for Doomsday, he's also essentially signing up for Secret Wars.
Yeah.
So he goes through these two extremely large scale Avengers level events. This is no longer going to be a grounded show about a guy trying to be an actor, right? So that's the other part of it, is it completely changes the tone, it completely changes the approach to the show and the character as a whole, and you're essentially looking at a season 2 that not even just the character but as a whole is so wildly removed from season 1 they might as well be two different shows.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why, again, like, I think at the end of the day, they have to go one route or the other. I really don't see how we can do both, if I'm being quite frank with you. I also think to kind of delve into this whole concept of, like, if we put season 2 aside, let's just say we're not doing season 2, and we do want to discuss the fact that the rumors are he could be in Doomsday. Let's just rip that Band-Aid off. Where I struggle with this is how, I guess, is the first question. But the second is, obviously we saw he was honing in on his powers. He's been getting better at using them. He's no expert. And so I'm a little unsure how they're going to have this man who has had these abilities for his whole life, to his knowledge, has barely even started to scratch the surface of what they can or cannot do. And now he's going to possibly be recruited or whatever is going to be the sake of it, and yet has very little knowledge of how to use his own abilities. Like, I that is a speed bump I keep getting stuck on.
I think that's very fair, because, and this isn't, I'm not saying this in any way to criticize Simon, and because I don't think this statement that I'm about to say is even specific to him. If you're going to put any sort of enhanced individual in the field who is not completely in control of their powers, they could very well be a liability just as much as they could be an asset.
Hey, somebody say Wanda Maximoff.
I mean, yeah, she was an example. I feel like look at, this is another good example, Jean Grey, in a lot of her, experience. It's not even just experience with her, it's just the inability to control things around the Phoenix Force, and those types of things.
Well, to be fair, the Phoenix Force is a little bit of a different story for her.
Totally. I guess my point just being, regardless of whether or not you're trained or if you just have control over all of your abilities, if you do not have that control, you could do more harm than good. And so it is definitely a challenge to think about Simon, who, yes, he's putting in the work right now to learn about his powers. I mean, did that man know he could fly at the beginning of the series? I'm not sure, but he seemed very confident that he could do that at the end. And he was like, yeah, Trevor, I'm going to break you out of jail by flying and let's do this thing. Man had no qualms. He was ready to go. So he somehow figured out he could fly, and he's been doing what seems like a great job.
I'd love to know how
himself.
he figured that out. Truly.
No, literally, what is the trial and error for, can I use my power to fly?
Yes.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
A little dangerous.
Honestly, what we need more of is what they did with Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. We need more montages of people figuring out how to use their abilities.
Yes, please.
Because,
those are some of the best shots.
The one other, and obviously we already mentioned her 4 times, and I always will because she's Mother. But the only other one that I kind of feel like they naturally show the progression of their power is the Scarlet Witch, aka Wanda Maximoff. I feel like she's the only one that we obviously don't see her necessarily doing trial and error, but we see her progress throughout her movies and film and TV appearances until she eventually takes on being the Scarlet Witch and wears the mantle and everything of that nature. But I still think about that when Anthony Mackie and her were in an interview and he's like, she's at a rave the whole time and he's doing all the hands because
Iconic.
That is what she used to do, right? That was really, and the mind control, Age of Ultron, the big thing was the mind control and she was getting in their heads. I think they did a really good job of progressing her abilities throughout her appearances.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
loved that in Tobey Maguire, his Spider-Man, we literally saw him figuring out how to shoot the webs and swing and all that stuff. I want to see more of that. Especially with Wonder Man, because I think he's one that makes the most sense to kind of see that with. What does that look like? How is this man learning how to do all of this?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. It is interesting, and I do wonder, like, are there elements to his powers that he hasn't yet tapped because he doesn't even know to look for them yet? Like,
Yeah.
where does his creativity limit what he's able to do physically because he just doesn't even know, like, how we were saying, like, how did he figure out that he could fly? Well, what else can he do that he hasn't even thought to test? Did he accidentally, fall? Did he accidentally, like, shoot up in the air? Unclear. But I do think that's a good point. I think where I want to kind of take the conversation next, beyond just, this man is just starting to embrace that part of himself and his training, because I do think there can be a level of training done by some Avengers team. I think we see Cap training Wanda at certain points, and how to, and Nat does it too. They kind of take some of the younger Avengers under their wing and try to teach them, this is how you run this up, this is how you do this, that, or the other thing. So I think there's an opportunity to do that. I know, if he's getting let's just put this out there. If they're recruiting Wonder Man, very likely we're in dire straits, right? Because they are trying to get everybody they can, regardless of their level of training, all hands on deck to stop whatever is happening. So, is there time for training? Maybe not. We'll see. We'll see. But I think the bigger question from a logistical standpoint is, even, how do we get Simon connected to the Avengers? How does he basically how does he get into this fight, right? Because we know how certain people are going to get involved, or we think we know how certain people are going to get involved, or how they might be alerted to the larger threat. But Simon's out here being like, I'm an actor and I just happen to have these powers, but I don't see him out here searching for multiversal threats.
Okay, here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to give myself, or give y'all, but like in and of myself, whatever. I'm going to say how, yeah, it's fine. English just stopped working. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I've had a long day and words just stopped working, and that's all right, guys. You're not here. You are literally here to listen to me talk, but you're not here to like really think about it too hard.
That's Katie's way of saying, don't internalize anything that I say.
Yeah. Just like listen on a surface level. Don't necessarily overthink. And the grammar police, don't listen. I talk faster than I could think about it, so it all comes out quite quick. No, I think if I were to say my ideal way I see this going is, you pointed out last week, we have the connection with Trevor and Shang-Chi.
Yes.
We know that exists. We also on the West Coast, like we're out here, we're prevalent, we're over there. I actually think what I think is the most natural way is not that he is recruited, because I think that's weird. I think that's going to be super strange. That would actually bother me if that was the route they went, because at the end of the day, nobody really knows he has these abilities. And so why would they be going out of their way to recruit him? That doesn't really make sense. And again, we have to go with the facts we have. And that's that right now, nobody knows it. He really shouldn't be on the Avengers radars, any of the Avengers radars, on anybody's radars, period. The end, other than the DODC, who's not sharing it with the Avengers, like we're ops, if you will. So ideally, I think I expect Doomsday to create such a catastrophic event of some sort, just like Thanos did, that it literally affects everybody around, to the point where something is happening with Simon and Trevor. They're facing something going on, and Trevor's like, I know somebody. And enter Shang-Chi, who's already working with Sam's Avengers teams, because we know he has that connection to Carol and the Hulk, and there was somebody else on that call.
Was it Rocket?
No.
Or am I thinking of Endgame?
I mean, honestly, Shang-Chi also came out so long ago that I was like, but like those are the people we're kind of already grandfathering into Sam's version of the Avengers to some degree, because it's like, well, that's kind of, they're semi what's left of the original. Not really, I'm not saying OG6, but of like the ones who fought Thanos and like whatever. And Carol technically is like the OG Avenger, like literally the OG Avenger.
Literally why they have that name in canon MCU lore.
Yes, exactly. So I see it kind of, that's the bridge, is like they're facing something that Trevor's like, I know somewhere, or I know someone we can go to, or somewhere we can go. And it's Shang-Chi, who then takes them into Sam's Avengers and is like, here you go. Here's the team. This guy can help us. Like, that's the most natural progression. And that gives Infinity War vibes of like, here's this team picking up random people. Here's this team picking up random people. Here's how we're pulling the pieces. Because in a team up like this, that's the only natural way any of that's going to go. And if I watch him get recruited, I'm literally going to sit there and be like, are you freaking kidding me? Because that doesn't make sense. Nobody could just show up and be like, Simon, you're coming with us. We need you. Like, that doesn't make sense to where we last left off unless you're going to give me any other piece of content that's going to explain that somehow he's on the Avengers radar.
I hear you. Actually, what I wish would have happened, now that I'm like thinking about it, I know I talked about this in the 5 to 8 reactions episode, is that I wanted a little bit of something at the end of the episode 8 just to like give us a hint of where Simon was going. I do wish we had gotten some sort of call between Shang-Chi and Trevor or something to show that they're still in contact and that's still a very viable, connection between the two of them.
Or even during the plane scene, I think there could have been a great way to kind of insinuate that there's still a connection between the two of them, because when he gets arrested in the airport, that's not that far out from when the events of Wonder Man is happening. And he's literally coming back from the events of Shang-Chi.
Is that what that's meant to imply?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So if you think about that, I would have loved even like a text message from Sean and being like, hope you're back okay. Let me know. Like, or something, just be like, we'll get dinner. I don't know, something stupid. It didn't have to be much, but it would have been like, aha, okay.
Yeah, or even too, like, something else that could have been interesting is Trevor trying to reach out to Shang-Chi when he was getting squeezed by the DODC. Like, hey, can you help a guy out? Like there were just interesting, there were ways to do it. And look, like we said earlier in the episode, a lot of people liked that Wonder Man wasn't quite so steeped in all of these connections. But that being said, I think later on in the show, especially I'm looking at episode 8 towards the end, I think there should have been to kind of give a trajectory for Simon moving forward, because I think it would have helped, especially with these now doomsday rumors and these conversations that we're having.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, help us understand how that's going to happen. Now, to your point about him not really being on the Avengers radar and that big connection, or how he could come in really being Trevor's knowledge of Shang-Chi and their, friendship, I would say. I think the one other thing to mention here is that the new Avengers, I don't disagree with your assessment of the Avengers, Sam's Avengers, because I think that's true. But there's one other variable here on the table, and that is the new Avengers. And they are led, or not really led, but they're on paper led by an extremely morally ambiguous figure in Valentina. And Valentina has CIA roots. Valentina has her informants and her knowledge in a lot of different places. So I could see a very compelling argument that she has people in the DODC that are feeding her information. And because the DODC knows about Simon, she could very well be reaching out on the new Avengers' behalf, or feeding the information directly to Yelena and Bucky and all the rest of the members and saying, hey, this guy could be a great asset for the team. Here's kind of his file from the DODC. I don't think that's super far-fetched. I think that's the one way he could be recruited, and it's not something that's coming completely out of left field.
I don't necessarily disagree. I will say I think that's putting a lot of weight on what the DODC does or doesn't know about him. Because if we go off of what we've learned in the show, first off, they actually didn't know whether or not Simon had the abilities. They were just suspicious of Simon.
Yeah, but I think him breaking Trevor out confirmed.
No, hold on, Miss Girl. Until I was in the middle of saying it, the very
end. Pause too long.
It's for dramatic effect. Up until the very end, But even then, they like, because we see him obviously say the whole thing about like, oh, it was all, what is it, psionic energy? Is that what he was saying? It was, or
Ionic.
ionic? Stop laughing at me. I can see she's sitting here laughing at me. Listen, I knew it was something ionic, but I didn't know if it was only
Like
ionic.
ion, you know what an
Girl,
ion
science
is?
and I are not besties. We're no. All of that out of my brain as soon as I didn't need to know it, because no thanks. I still can tell you potassium on the periodic table is K. That is the only one that I can solidly
What
tell
a
you.
random piece of knowledge. Well, and you probably also know that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell.
Yeah, but only because it like became a meme. Like
Studying via internet culture.
yes. But that all being said, obviously up until the very end, but like he obviously is aware of the energy that's there. He knows he's got the abilities, but I'd love to know what that file actually says, to what degree, because quite frankly, if we're being honest, it's all kind of hearsay. They don't actually have the proof that they can 100% say that he's used his abilities to cause all of this and to do all of this. They don't have the proof. So I do kind of wonder what that file holds, because it's like, hey, this is what we're thinking, and all the facts might lead this direction. But like, my point in all of this is saying is the file compelling enough for somebody like Valentina to be like, this guy? Because they aren't really sure.
Fair. And I don't think we have time to do this, but in a perfect world to kind of bridge that gap, it would be something like, you know, the new Avengers are kind of doing surveillance, essentially, to try to understand how much of what the DODC suspects is actually true. Unfortunately, that could be that wouldn't be something we have time for in Doomsday. That's too small a minutia to handle.
I also don't think we have time for him to join the new Avengers, if I want to be quite frank. Because here's the thing. Sam's Avengers are off screen.
Yeah.
We haven't even seen them. We don't know them, which is why I think they're the wild card that makes the most sense for him to join, because the new Avengers are front and center, and we know that. They're the ones watching the Fantastic Four ship come in. So, and again, they could be pointing us in the wrong direction, but regardless, it gives the insinuation, if you will, that they're going to be the ones that are greeting them, in which case I feel like they're driving the story. So I actually don't think we have time for Wonder Man to show up and be like, hey, I'm joining the team.
Y'all. I have a far left field theory for you. That's actually not that far out of capacity here. I'm going to put together a lot of things that we have talked about that are rumors about Simon and make some assumptions that they're all true. But if they are, I think this is a possibility here. So hear me out. We know that we have the OG X-Men in this movie. They are mutants. Our OG X-Men are extremely good at finding other mutants with Cerebro. And we know that they will likely be coming to 616 because the Nightcrawler actor has mentioned that he has had scenes with Pedro Pascal in which he has accidentally, or he didn't actually injure Pedro, but Pedro hurt himself on set.
No, because first off, I love Alan Cummings, but also like I can't, because if you guys watch The Traitors, like this man is so funny. So the fact that he like exposed that bit of information, though he definitely should not have mentioned that he was in a scene with Pedro Pascal, is so funny.
Yeah. But I say all that to say that leads me to the assumption that the OG X-Men are coming to 616 because we all believe that the Fantastic Four are coming to 616 based on what we saw at the end of Thunderbolt / New Avengers. Now, if the old X-Men are here, regardless of whether or not they have Cerebro, which they probably won't, but bear with me here, Professor X is able to identify other mutants. If Wonder Man is a mutant, he could be found by Professor X. It's a little more left field, but it's not impossible.
It's not impossible. I think my confines here are what we have real time for. And I just am not sure, with already having the X-Men showing up in whatever capacity they're going to be showing up, I'm not sure our focus can be on bringing Wonder Man in any way.
Hear me out. Because
I'm trying.
I know, because here's the thing. The mental gymnastics that we have to do in this episode that we're talking about right now is how do we get Wonder Man in? Because that's the rumor. So we have to operate from the premise of we're going to operate on the assumption that he is in this film. I understand that it is not confirmed and it may not happen.
Yeah.
But somehow he has to get from his show to Doomsday.
Correct.
And somehow there has to be some sort of introduction to the main players, whether that's Sam's Avengers, New Avengers, X-Men, Thor and Loki, whomever, Fantastic Four, the Wakandans, who we know are linked up with the Fantastic Four, whomever it is, he needs to link up with someone. So we have to find that nexus point, if you will, somewhere.
Don't do that.
Actually, as I said it, I was like, I love this and Caitlin hates it.
Yeah,
But-
no, don't.
But I think what could be interesting with the whole Professor X identifying a mutant scene, if that's the route they choose to go, is you could actually bring in a few other characters at the same time. So you could find Simon. You could bring in Kamala. You could bring in Namor, which would then bring in the Wakandans who are already linked up with the Fantastic Four. So I just think that actually, if they go that route, you get a lot more bang for your scene buck, because we already have established mutants in the MCU, and it's like a 3-for-1 plus the Fantastic Four special. Plus, we know Kamala has connections with Carol. We know that Monica's in some other universe right now, so with X-Men, so that's a whole other thing. There's just some connections that could happen.
I hear you. I will just say I guess I struggle because I need to remind you that there was a rumor very early on that the X-Men were only going to last for like the first 10 minutes of this movie.
Well, then when is Magneto leveling New Jersey? In the first 10 minutes?
10 minutes of the movie. Go on, like, come on, I just said it. No. I mean, again, that was not confirmed, but that was kind of the whole concept, was that like they weren't really going to last that long.
But then when is Alan Cummings hanging out with Pedro Pascal?
Well, some of them might last longer than others. I don't know. I'm not. Do I look like I wrote the movie? No, I don't know. Like, I'm just saying, let's just remind ourselves that that's a thing. I'm not sure how much there's really going to be this level of focus on mutants. And I think I hear you, because, okay, so here's the struggle that we're having here, guys, is when you put the microscope to one character, you start to change the entire story to make sense for a singular character,
Right.
which is literally what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
If we were to decide to zoom all the way back out and actually look at Doomsday once again for what Doomsday is, we quite frankly cannot be like, where's Wonder Man gonna come in? Like, it doesn't, that's just not the focus. He wouldn't be the focus. Regardless of whether he's in the movie or not, he is not gonna be one of the big players, because we've seen trailers who include the big players already, or teasers, or whatever you want to call them. We know some of the characters who have already been confirmed, which are clearly going to be some of the bigger players. We all watched the chairs. Like, we know who they were definitely comfortable putting forward, and it's because they're the ones that are probably going to be leading a lot of the movie. Not saying there aren't others. Obviously, there will be plenty of other characters involved, but they're the ones that they're resting a lot of this movie on. And so I think with that knowledge in hand, when we zoom back out, I just don't know if there's an emphasis on the mutants the way that theory kind of shakes out. I just am not sure that's going to be as relevant as it feels like it is if we're thinking just about Wonder Man. I think we have to like genuinely stop and sit there and be like, what is the easiest way this man could physically possibly ever end up in this movie? And to me, it's Trevor going, I got a friend, and we play the friend line, and there he is with Shang-Chi.
Look, I mean, that's fair. I think it comes down to the fact that we still don't really have a synopsis for Doomsday. Like, we have 4 teasers that the Russo brothers said aren't really teasers and are, meant to be other things. There are some rumors about what that actually is, and we haven't actually talked about that, but
maybe that's next week's episode, everybody.
yeah, well, as I'm saying this, I'm like, the gears are turning, which is why the words were not coming out. But what I'm trying to get at here is we don't actually understand truly yet what the general plot line is going to be of Doomsday. And I get that we often go into films not knowing, all of the nuances, but at least we have a pretty good idea of like, this is the comic run that it's adapting, and or this is kind of the trajectory that we expect this film to go. Being less, only about 10 months out, we still have a lot of question marks. We don't have an official synopsis to my knowledge. We got that little blurb that was somewhere early on or later last year, but we don't have, a full length trailer to kind of help guide what the narrative arc is going to be. So it is hard to say where are the things that they're going to spend most of their time. What characters are they prioritizing? What storylines are they prioritizing? So that we can better try to understand where Simon fits in. A lot of it is just so much conjecture and assumptions because we don't have even the most basic framework of what is happening in this film with which to try to fit Simon in.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think that's totally a valid point. And that's why I think I said too, like when we zoom in, it's easy for us to be like, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this. But at the end of the day, could be nothing. We don't know. We we actually am not sure. And again, we're running off of rumor. And I think that's not a bad thing because when we had this conversation literally last week, we were under the impression he wasn't inherently going to be in Doomsday. So the fact that within a week that has changed and rumors have started to fly again, and now you're kind of like, oh crap, he could be, it does open that door for us to think about it and talk about it. But to T's point, there's really not much of that ability for us to be like, yeah, because what is this movie about? We don't know. And that's okay. I'm trying to.
Is it?
I'm trying to get past like the general fear I have of this movie and just say like, I don't know what's gonna happen, and that's okay. I'm hoping as we get closer, we are 11 months out, guys. We still have plenty of time to be getting other content. Like, it's not a crazy thought. It's not. If I knew what this movie was about today, I'd be a little shocked. It's really still far enough out in advance. I couldn't even tell you what Spider-Man's about. Like, that one's coming in July. So it's not a crazy concept to not know, but it does make it hard when you start to get the rumors. And let's be real, we've been covering this type of stuff for months. Who's in it? Who's not in it? Who's rumored to be in it? Who's rumored not to be in it? Who's definitely not in it? Are they saying, I don't know? Like, it's been an ongoing conversation. The biggest reason this is prevalent right now is we just watched a show and we're trying to figure out with the way this show ended, does it even make sense for this character to be in Doomsday?
Yeah, totally. And I think it'll be interesting to see how all of this evolves over the next few months because I think, let me put it this way, I'm waiting for the moment where they realize, oh man, Spider-Man actually comes out first. Maybe we should start promoting this film before we focus everybody on Doomsday because it is a little odd to be focusing so heavily on a film that comes out in, to your point, 11 months when you have a film coming out in 6 that you haven't released a trailer for. You don't have a lot of other promo going for it. Yet Doomsday is always in the news. We have those trailers releasing over a year prior, or the teasers, I should say, over a year prior. So I'm kind of waiting for us to just like pivot into a Spider-Man situation where we're actually talking about that.
Here's what I'm just going to say. We've talked about this a lot because we both have marketing backgrounds. Disney and their marketing haven't really made sense for a long time.
Yeah, I would say this whole phase has been inconsistent and not coherent. Like, I don't mean to be like critical, but it's just like the way that they have chosen to promote both the shows and some of the films has been kind of mind-boggling,
questionable at best.
Yeah.
Even down to, I think we made the comment in like our sister scoop from last week or something about like when the Daredevil stuff dropped, and we were like, kind of weird to decide to do that on the day Wonder Man is dropping, to drop a Daredevil trailer, but like, go off, I guess. Like, that's weird.
Yeah, because you have so much time.
Yeah, and that's also not usually something you would do.
Right.
Because why would you cannibalize yourself and another property that hasn't even had a chance to shine yet by going forward with a trailer for one that people are excited for?
Yeah.
People are going to lose their minds at Daredevil, whether it came out the day it was on Wonder Man was coming out or not. Everybody's going to blow up the internet about it. So why do it on a day that you had a show dropping?
Yeah.
All 8 episodes. Not even the first like episode or 2. All 8. All at once dropping that night, and you dropped the Daredevil trailer. Like, I think marketing wise, it's been very unclear. And I think that's what's causing some of this to be more difficult
Yeah.
to guess and get into. And that's why, we have the rumors and we've been playing with them and we're going off of them. And that's what this whole episode's been about is, based off the possibility and the rumor that we do have, this character now showing up in Doomsday. Like, this is what we're trying to figure out. But to your point, we got a whole Spider-Man movie and we know near to nothing about it. So that is all to say. Obviously, we're very excited about Doomsday. I'm very excited to see Wonder Man appear again, whether that is in Doomsday or in his own next season, which would also be very exciting to me. Regardless, I'm excited to see him. I like that he's part of these conversations. I like that it seems like there's a direction for him because I think we ended last week going little worried that we're not going to see him again because that's what tends to happen to some of these characters. So this excites me that we even were able to have an episode talking about how do we get him into Doomsday, because again, worried he wouldn't appear. So I'm just going to take a win as a win. I know nothing, guys. None of us know anything.
Yeah. I think that is the thesis of the episode. And that's probably the best way to sum up our thoughts and our kind of where we are, basically, with Wonder Man.
Yeah.
Glad he's hopefully back, but we have no clue what is happening. We'll see how things evolve over the next couple of months. If we continue getting Doomsday information or not, and maybe that'll help clarify things. Maybe it'll make it worse. Who knows? But on that note, we're going to wrap our conversation around Wonder Man and kind of where we might see him next and how he may or may not appear in Doomsday. You can follow on your podcast platform of choice to, just make sure you're following the show. Our website is also linked below where you can check out the podcast calendar for future episodes. And also linked below is our Buy Me a Coffee if you'd like to support the show.
You guys can also give us a follow on all of our socials linked in the show notes down below. And we will be back next week with a new podcast episode. Topic to BD, because we might be discussing Doomsday things. We'll see. But make sure you guys are coming back next week as we have new content. And as always, Marvel just blew your mind. So let's talk about it.